So today on Unpopular Demand, I'm joined with the singer, songwriter, artist B, who you're really known for blending your mix of pop, R&B with such a nostalgic and genuine Y2K kind of era, channeling those nostalgic vibes. You recently just released your most recent album. That was a lot of recents. Love Songs. And so far it's been taking the world by storm and everyone's been really gravitating to it in the sound. But other than that, first and foremost, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. So give me a backstory behind the name B, because right now I feel like people think you're the new like Six Lack. They're probably saying it like 3 and B and really messing with it a little bit, trying to figure out exactly. But for those listening, it is pronounced B, correct?
Like the bug.
Okay. Now, where's the name stem from exactly?
So B is just what I go by in my day to day, just with like a normal B. But it actually comes from when I came out as non-binary, I obviously because it wasn't really rocking with my government name anymore. So my last name is Broadway, like the street, and I just was like, I'm just gonna grab that letter, and then yeah, just started going by B. And then as far as like the six leg B thing, like that's kind of the point a little bit is to because as people talk about it, and I think the more confused people are initially, the better, because then they're like, I know how to spell it, I do not know how to say it.
Yeah.
And
There's
it's just
definitely
another thing to talk about.
there's like a string of artists that have always had to deal with the pronunciation of their names, like XXXTentacion, or same thing with like I remember there was a couple people messing up with Khalifa, thinking it was like something more harder than what it actually was.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think your name it stems from. It's definitely something for people to grab more attention to, because now they're like, what is it? Like, how do I say it? Am I saying it right? Am I saying it wrong? But nonetheless, just for those listening, it's B for us to make it easier.
Yeah.
And then to further speak on that, a lot of your music is now being just seen as like your different stylistics of how you change the font and the format, whether it's capital letters or anything you put, which is including number italics, everything and that such. But a lot of it really translates back to like a lot of people compare it to that R&B Y2K coded, with how it brings that kind of same similar just era back. What do you specifically take away from that era, and how has it influenced you in your career and your music?
I think there's so many aspects of it that I kind of pull. I think especially with like my naming conventions and all that, I think a lot of the 2000s was really defined by this kind of hyper designed, like everything was over designed as fuck. Everything was like, just the maximum of what it could possibly be. Like
Yeah,
be that
3D.
music, be that videos, be that even graphic design. If you look at the fonts from the 2000s, it's like they're just so extra for no reason. So it's kind of grabbing that and bringing that design philosophy into every aspect of what I'm doing musically. So like my music is really maximalistic. Like it's very over the top at times. There's like, it's supposed to be dramatic. It's supposed to be over the top. And I think that's actually what a lot of people that are trying to do the 2000s stuff kind of miss out on, and why it kind of falls flat for some people is that they don't really get that. It's supposed to be like, it's supposed to perfectly toe the line between really corny and like really tasteful. And it's like right in the middle is kind of where, like, that's where the Timbalands live. That's where the Pharrells and Chads live. Like, yeah.
Speaking on the era, because you grew up throughout that time, it's not like you're some Gen Alpha or Gen Y that gets no idea or anything about it. Like you actually lived through that time. The 2000s was part of it. I grew up in it. I wasn't old enough to enjoy everything. I never was able to go to a house party where they'd play like B2K or
Yeah, I mean, neither.
anything in that age. But I was old enough to remember like enough, and also just still enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
I never had my own flip phone, but I was right there where everybody else had one. But when it comes down to it, is there anything from that era that you most enjoy or you most miss? I know there's a lot of things, like there were like music shows like TRL, 106 in Park, or we had over the top reality television like Parental Control and just anything that was on MTV at that time. But is there
Yeah.
anything from that era that, if not bring back, that you miss or like enjoy most, if not that?
Yeah, and I think that I think the use of bring back is funny because I think people are always like, "I'll bring it back to 2000s" type thing. But really, it comes much more from a place of like appreciation, and I just want there to be more of what I like out in the world. So it's like, that's the reason that I pressed my own CDs for this project. Like, instead of going for like a vinyl campaign or something, I was like, okay, more people probably won't want this, but like that fits the vibe and like
Yeah.
kind of what I want. Also, like my little brother still drives a car that has a CD player in it, so I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do CDs. But yeah, like kind of roll out with this project video wise, and we're still working on a lot of these, is kind of to call back and make callbacks to like that TV programming from the 2000s. So, you know, we have that one really over the top music video. We have one video where we're just doing Kelly Clarkson's audition tape from American Idol season 1, like 1-to-1 recreation. And yeah, the idea is to grab all the different programming from MTV and kind of make that into the music video, whatever, you know, creative.
That aesthetic, yeah, that form.
Yeah, and then I thought this was really funny because we were talking about this the other day, but my manager gave me this I don't know if you ever had one of these when you were growing up, but it's not gonna show up. But
a little bit.
you know the hit. You ever heard of hit clips? It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
So he brought me this little hit clip with NSYNC on it, and I was like, no way, I haven't seen one of these in so long. So yeah,
You gotta find them from like a pawn shop, if not a garage sale at best.
yeah, and it still works, which is crazy. But I used to have one of these with I don't remember who it was, but it was I had like 3 songs and I would sing it all over and over and over again. Yeah. So just I don't know, like hitchy little 2000 stuff I'm really a big fan of.
No, that's dope. Agreed. Now, when you put it into your music in this album, because everyone's gonna try to say like, oh, it sounds like this, or it sounds like Timbaland, it sounds like Darkchild, the Neptunes, Jermaine Dupri, Sean Garrett, all the different influential like producers and how it sounds when it comes down to it. What was your overall direction that you wanted to go with, though, when it came down to making this album? What came down to it? Because Love Songs, it's not front to back the only thing that's gonna be like, oh, it's just a nostalgic vibe. It still has elements and pieces of you as an artist as well, too. It's not strictly this is all you're gonna get out of it. But what was your initial direction that you wanted to go with aside from the 2000s energy? Like, what did you want it to stand for and say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the name that I landed on really kind of sums it up. I just was writing a lot of love songs, and I was like, it's come together, and when you play it straight through, it makes sense, and it's supposed to. But at the same time, I wanted it to kind of be like this all-encompassing, hitting every different lane that I could hit in this pop space, and kind of like, you know, it has the Trendsetter, which is like a Soulja Boy track, basically, but then it also has like, you know, it has that pop, like JT type stuff. And yeah, I'm really kind of just trying to hit all those different spots. And I think that part of it was artistic decision, and part of it is all of it self-produced for the most part. I'm really kind of just trying to come in and flex a little bit and be like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this.
Yeah, very well versed.
Yeah. So I really, it was more of a, my last project was very like all R&B focused, and this one was a lot more like being like, I did that, no, I did this, and then kind of giving people little tastes of everything to be like, okay, when the big thing comes, it's all gonna come back together.
And then when it comes down to the production of this album, how exactly did you go about it? What did you normally start with when it came down to making these tracks and the instrumentation? Did you try to start with the drums? Did you want to go with the synthesizers? Or what exactly did it stem from and originate when it came down to making these songs?
Yeah, I think song to song, it varies, honestly, especially like when you're working through different genres. You know, if I'm doing a reggaeton track, I'm usually going to start with like drums or something. But
yeah, of course.
For a lot of these, but for a lot of these, I started with the drums, just because a lot of these tracks are really rhythm forward. And, you know, a lot of them kind of start from that place where you're just kind of humming a melody and getting like,
It's almost like beatboxing in a way.
And I beatbox a lot when I'm producing. Like I don't record myself beatboxing, but like, you know, if somebody was in here sitting behind me while I'm producing, I'm kind of beating it out to myself out loud while I'm like putting it into my DAW. I think that's actually a really big part of my process is like, I kind of do everything by ear. And I know music theory. I went to school for it, but like, I still tend to kind of, like, I play guitar note by note. Like, I don't play guitar. I'll record 4 separate tracks and be playing one note and be like, all right, that's the chord. So yeah, a lot of it is just kind of like vibing it out and seeing where it goes from there.
And then speaking on just how you had those early just beginnings and how you make your music and how you went about going to becoming an artist, what exactly was it you realized you wanted to make music? And when did you realize that you could do it professionally? If anything was simultaneous, by all means, then care to explain. But when was it that you knew this is what I want to do? And then when was it where it kind of flipped and the switch was, I can do this?
I mean, the funny thing is, I decided that I wanted to be a musician when I was in ninth grade, not at all in the same way as I am now. Like, I wanted to be a trumpet player in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and I was like, that's my goal. That's where I'm going to end up 100%, and nothing is going to deter me from that. And that took me to music school, that took me to a lot of auditions, and yeah, it just kind of ended up not being for me. And from there, I kind of got really into jazz for a little bit, and then that progressed into neo soul and R&B. And honestly, one of the first like artists that I ever really dug into was D'Angelo. Coming out of that jazz space into like more of a production focused and like
Was it a Brown Sugar album? Sorry to interrupt. Was it?
It was yeah, literally the first track I ever heard from him was Sugar Daddy off
Okay.
Messiah.
Yeah.
But then yeah, I kind of went back into the older stuff that has a lot more horn writing on it. And one of my teachers also used to do a lot of horn arranging for pop and R&B. So that kind of just naturally progressed into that. And as far as making a living off of music, I've been a freelance musician since I was in college. Like, that's how I paid my bills in college. So I was always very hyper aware of how much you have to do to make it and make a living as an artist and as a musician. And honestly, that's helped a lot, transitioning into this space where I am running a studio and where I am, starting to try and make money off of, my art and my artist project. So yeah, I think it's just been a series of little steps that have all kind of brought me right to where I am and given me a strange and unique toolkit to kind of approach problems with that I feel like has served me pretty well so far.
Is there a role that you enjoy most about being an artist, whether it's anything specific? Because I know artists, you have so many different hats to wear, and there's so many different things that you guys have now to just be responsible of and to do, whether it's the production aspect, the songwriting aspect, the overall performance aspect, or some people enjoy even just the overall the implementation that comes with creating an album, or even some people love being just on tour, or anything of that nature. Is there anything specifically when it comes to being an artist that you enjoy most, that you take the most pride in?
Yeah, I think the two things that I like the most about like being an artist, and I think this is why I ended up becoming an artist, is putting together an overall project. I think that having that level of control and like creative freedom to be like, this is what this is. These are the songs, but this is how they go together.
So you like the structure and finding the seams.
Yeah, almost arranging stuff. And then I just like, I love creating, like, not just music. I really try to surround myself with as much like creative energy and disciplines. And when I'm not doing music, I'm always making something else. So I just love that overall creative aspect of being an artist, like, brainstorming almost, like the Rick Rubin type shit where it's like, that's a good idea.
Yeah, literally. And Rick Rubin of all people, it's one way or the other. He's almost like a rose that grew from concrete. You just kind of water it and you don't know how big it's going to be, but every time it just happens. It's wild. So then when it goes down to how you shape and go about your tracks and organizing it and putting it into specific what makes sense, because I know on this album for Love Songs, you've got interludes, you've got some songs that can just overall just transition between each other that make the most perfect sense, and it blends very seamlessly. Is there any just overall way you go about doing that? Do you tend to start with the slower songs first? Do you think you try to get more upbeat and more up-tempo songs in a certain area? Like, how do you best go about what's going to make sense for your transitions? Because I know it's such a, I wouldn't say it's as undervalued as it used to be. I think a lot of times that when we did have albums of like 20 tracks, it was always all about just how are you going to transition between each other. And now you might get an album with like 40, 30 tracks here and there. Just a big piece of work. Nonetheless, no diss to those who do it, but it's hard to kind of throw yourself into there. You don't really get the soundscape of it. You don't really see too many artists do that. But how do you go about what best fits and how it correlates well with another one and make it cohesive?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's kind of this shift in like the 2010s, dropping projects that are mostly it's like a album length project full of singles
Yeah.
that don't really have much to do with each other. And I like I said, I do. That's like one of my favorite parts is coming up with the transitions. It depends again, project to project, how I would structure stuff. But like for example, my first one, it was structured into like, these are songs about one thing, these are songs about one thing, these are songs about one thing. So it was like almost three distinct sections, and then the interludes split those up.
So it was
For
like, what,
this
like
one,
say like 9 tracks, and then you get like 9 tracks that were songs, and maybe like put
yeah,
12 in total with the interlude, something like around that.
exactly. And so it would be like, I would be like, this is me finding love,
Yep.
this is me fighting with somebody, this is like the breakup song.
Act 1, 2, and 3, basically.
Exactly.
It was more of a cinematic movie
Yeah.
portion.
And then for this other one, it's a lot more of like the key of this song makes sense going into the key of this song. And it was more a question of like, how do I keep the energy moving? And like, how do I create something that you can listen to straight through and it doesn't ever drop your interest? Like when it slows down deliberately to give you a break right before it, picks back up again. And the interludes in that are more of like trying to transition from one key and energy back into another key and energy. So it's almost like when you're changing the song on the jukebox and there's that little pause before, the next song comes in. And it was more trying to craft like a sonic space than it was doing anything narratively. So yeah, it's almost like and I do all this. I don't do this while I'm like writing or, the initial stages. We came in here with a big ass whiteboard and we wrote down every song in order that it was going to be in. And then I would come in here early, like I do every day, and like sit by myself and just be like, okay, I need to add a piano at this like little end section that transitions in the next song. So I would do all my transitions pretty much like the week before I turn the project in. And that's how I've done it both times. It's just kind of, it's the very last step. And it really bothers me if things don't like crossfade or go into each other really well.
Yeah. It just has to have a seamless plan. And I guess that does make a little bit more sense. It makes it easier than to try to plan it all out in advance. Because then you might be struggling to find the exact thing that's going to fill in the gaps and the cracks when you could just make the transitions at the end of it, since that's kind of how most transitions are actually made to be. Like we just shoot everything or record everything, put all the content, you just throw all the paint at the wall, and then you could just create the lines that make sense and how they connect. So I guess the power to you, that's really a smart way to go about it too, in that sense.
Yeah. And I think that in a lot of creative disciplines, like I think a lot of people will try to almost put the cart before the horse, like, and figure that stuff out as they go. And it's more of like you can force things to work that shouldn't work in post a lot of the time if you really have an understanding of what you're doing. And I think that that's a really fun part of it, is taking these things that maybe shouldn't work as well as they do and then being like, okay, but what actually would need to go here for it to work?
Do you find enjoyment in when you can take two parallels, or two separate parallels for that matter, and just seeing how they could be so divided between each other and then finding them to come together when it comes down to your music, whether it be you take hip hop drums and put pop synthesizers, or you can take in R&B acoustics and you can maneuver that with just drums that are more jazz driven. So when it comes down to that, do you like taking these different instrumentations and styles and blending them? Or do you prefer to stay on a certain key and on a certain road that will make everything seem, okay, this is the way it can go, this is the way it should be? Or do you like to get experimental sometimes when it comes down to producing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's really just I do so much and then see what ends up like piquing my interest after a little bit of time. So like I have my demos folder with like hundreds of demos in it, and then we'll go back and cut 10 out of that and be like, these are the best 10 out of all of these. And a lot of the times, like I don't finish writing until I've decided I actually want to use a track. Like it'll be just mumble gibberish. And but then as far as blending styles, again, it's less of an intentional thing and more of just a like, the things I'm listening to and the things that are influencing me in that moment always kind of find a way to come through. And I really try to not be picky and be like, okay, I am this type of producer. I do this type of thing. Like I have people come in here and want to make some like experimental ambient music, and I'm just as excited to make that as I am for somebody to come in here and be like, can you please make me a Cash Cobain beat and put a SZA sample on it? And, you know, those things are both equally exciting to me because there's so much to do in both of those spaces that I feel like hasn't been done.
True. There's a lot of depth and layers that you can do with a lot of just additives and elements and anything about what kind of stylistics you're going with it. So it makes perfect sense in that nature. And so now with Love Songs being out, Overtaking doing great as a single as well too. Shout out to you for making such a great record that a lot of people just gravitating more towards. But what exactly do you have next for B? What do you want to plan? How exactly do you want to go about anything down the line or for the future of what's to come, whether it be releasing more projects or putting out a couple more singles, taking a little bit of a break and then putting out, or touring a bit more? Because you're so, I don't want to say new, but you're on the rise as you continue to go right now. You're just going down the Elbic Road and you're creating such an amazing path for yourself. But what exactly does that path entail for those that are listening and those that are new to your story and what's going to be coming to see?
Yeah, this part is really interesting because I feel like up till now it's been very like, I wouldn't say carefree, but it's been very like, I haven't had to really lock in yet, just like on a business and artist side of things. And so like this end of the year has really been me kind of stepping back from making stuff and being like, what would be the next best move for me to make from here? Where my heart is really pulling me right now is I think I want to, like, I've done 2 projects this year, so I kind of want to step back from really putting a lot of focus in that and like kind of step back into my producer bag a little bit and, you know, do that work with other people and kind of expand my experience as a producer for other people. So at the end of the day, I can bring that all back into myself. And also, like, you know, you work with people, you collect favors and you collect friendships, and, you know, that all comes back and makes your artist project a little bit more high quality. And then I'm currently really interested in doing tour, or at least, you know, opening for somebody, or, you know, just hopping on a tour or something. But I'm really trying to lock in with the live stuff this coming year as well, since there's now people that actually want to hear it, and I'm not just doing dive bars in Brooklyn.
The traction's gaining, and it's only going to create more and more for you, and it's amazing to see.
Yeah. Thank
But
you.
no, honestly, love everything you got going for your work for yourself, because it's all just great stuff that you've been doing. It's just amazing work that we've seen from you. And it's honestly just your overall growth and your evolution and your changes from producer to songwriter to singer to artist. And it's great seeing all the different facets that have come from you and just everything that we've seen just from you, just what you've done.